Good morning. Why does this seem taller? Want to start off by admitting that I'm a little underprepared this morning. I remember John Allen admitting that once in class, and that took guts. So I don't mind admitting the same thing. Normally Saturdays are sort of set aside to prepare for this class, and yesterday I was running all over Van Alstyne looking for and soliciting donations from local businesses for a poetry slam that the English department is putting on, the second annual, and which was fun. Have you guys been to Oh My Golly Tamale or whatever? Have you? Go. Oh, I had just come from Bill Smith's, so I was full. And I walked around the corner to them, and they're like, let's give you a sample. I was like, full. Biscuits, gravy, eggs, bacon, hash browns. They're like, we got you. So they came out with a smoked pork tamale with fresh pico and sort of this queso ranch drizzle on it, on a paper plate. I can get behind that, right? Paper plate. No need for fine china. It's amazing. And then we closed the evening at the Justice's house. Had a beautiful evening. Getting to see some brothers and sisters that we haven't seen in a number of years. So if my lack of preparation is clear and perceived, I would ask that you direct all complaints to the Quarter family, since they're moving away, okay? And that's where we were last night, hanging out with them for a little bit, and so that was wonderful. And Elvin deserves it anyway. Where is he here? Is he still here? Or did he leave? See, that's why he deserves it. So, no. Lewis opens up the first chapter of Book 3 on morality with an anecdote about a boy who was asked, what do you think God is like? Have you ever asked your kids that? What do you think God is like? Those conversations just sort of come up, naturally sometimes. And Reese is he's the kind of kid that he'll just think. He'll sit and think, and you won't know he's thinking, right? But he's just mulling things over and trying to get things right. And then the right topic gets brought up, and he just spews, everything that he's thinking. And he said, it just blows my mind. He's always been there. It blows my mind. And he got all animated and passionate about it. And I was like, that's awesome, right? So he starts chapter 3 with this anecdote of this little boy, and he's asked, what do you think God is like? And the little boy thought about it for a moment and said with a familiar expression that kids have when they think they have the answer to a difficult question. He said, well, he's kind of the person that's always snooping around to see if anyone's having a good time. And then he stops them. And that was it. He's very proud of his answer, right? Because to him, that's kind of what it's like. And is there a connection between the way that little boy expressed what God is like to the way we kind of feel that God is like? There's a point at which it's really, really easy to focus on the can't do's, right? It's the can't do's. It's not about the shoulds, right? But I think there's a connection. If we're honest about it, there are times that we kind of feel the same way, and it regardless of age. Okay. My friends in high school kind of all disappeared. I always say I didn't have any friends in high school, which is true. But I had some friends in junior high and grade school, a handful of kids that I would hang around with. But in high school, they kind of disappeared, and I never knew why. Right? Until, honestly, my 20-year reunion, they told me why. because they were aware of it too. Guess what they were doing? Take a guess at what my friends were doing in high school. No, 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 not at all. Yeah, they were partying, okay? And two of my friends that disappeared looked at me and said, we knew you wouldn't be able to come. And there was a part of me that was kind of proud. And there's a part of me that was a little upset, right? You could have at least offered, right? You could have asked. You could have given me the opportunity to say, I'm sorry, we don't do that, right? And then go about my day, right? But they didn't, right? Our first idea of morality is about what we don't get to do, right? Not what we should do. It's something that interferes or stops us from participating in the fun stuff the world indulges in. It keeps us out of the party, one might say. In reality, Lewis has a good point about that. The moral rules are directions for running the human machine. And I really like that analogy. The moral rule, those are directions for running the human machine. Now, in junior high, I took metal shop. And we all looked at the lathe over there in the corner, and we're like, I can't wait to get to that, right? That's big time. And the day came where we could use the lathe, but the first day was what? Safety, right? Okay? Now, the training that you had to go through to be able to use the lathe was pretty extensive, right? All I knew was I was making a set of screwdrivers for my dad, which may or may not be functional when they're done. And he never used them, not because he didn't love them, but because they didn't work. Right? The handle kept coming off, you know. But that's all we were thinking of. We were going to get to use the lathe today. And honestly, when you passed the training the first day, you got to use the lathe unassisted. And as a teacher these days, letting a junior, thank you for the giggles, right? Is there a way that you would allow a junior high kid to use a lathe without an adult stapled to their side? But it was the 80s, baby, right? It was the 80s. We were Jackie and Diane sitting outside of Tasty Freeze, right? We didn't care. We just had to be at home, you know, when the lights came up. But all we were thinking of is we get to use the lathe, right? But when you go through the training, what's the first rule of the lathe? This machine that spins and won't stop. Bingo. Okay? Guess what we all wear? We were all wearing. Untucked, unbuttoned, sleeveless flannels. Right? Now some nostalgia should be coming in right now. Right? I wish we could still wear that. So ridiculous, but so comfortable, right? That's what we all had on. And we knew we were going to lathe training. Okay? So we all walked, you know, we're all up there with our mullets expecting, you know, to have to put them back, right? And yes, I had one. Put the mullets back, and we'd be good to go. It was like, no, you're about to kill yourself, right? So they're rules. They're not suggestions. And why are they there? Yeah. Okay? The moral laws work in the same way. And we're talking about we've already talked about how unforgiving the moral law can be. Because those evidences at the beginning, the vastness of the universe, right? The moral law, do either of those offer forgiveness? No. They're harsh. Okay? And they're harsh for a reason. These moral laws exist for a purpose. Okay? But we have found a way to sort of skirt that. We have found a way to alleviate the conscience as it comes to the moral law. And it's one slight change in wording. We've changed the moral law or moral rule to the moral ideal. Now, you may think that we're getting into hair splitting, but we're truly, truly not, okay? What's the difference between a moral law and moral idealism? See? Thank you. Nice. Say again? It's a concept, right? It's something you can look at, right, and say, you know, that's what we're supposed to do, but really?
Something that falls short of the ideal is still acceptable.
And that's a good one too. Okay? Well, that's the ideal. Idealism carries with it understanding that it can never be achieved, right? That's the ideal. So it's okay to understand that we're not perfect. And so, therefore, there's no reason to try. Because no one can achieve ideal anyway. There's something else that makes it much more comfortable rather than the moral law, to say the moral idealism. And that has everything to do with, well, I'll demonstrate. How many of you believe that the ideal vacation is the beach? Come on. Yeah? You were all crazy. There's no way. For how long are you dealing with sand after you bring a quarter of the beach home with you in your suitcase, right? The ideal vacation being a beach. Oh, no, can't do it. Give me the mountains that surround the Canadian side of the Great Lakes, right? Give me that. Give me that. Oh, my goodness. So, what does that demonstrate, though? They're both acceptable and they're both different, right? Your ideal of something may not be my ideal of the same thing, right? And therefore, we can go down different paths and everything should be fine because your ideal is great and you can have that, but mine is different, right? So, my ideal morality is to tell no lies. So it's okay if I tell a couple, right? My ideal morality is to not commit adultery. So it's okay if I do that a couple times. You see the danger. If it's simply an ideal and not a rule, then if you don't achieve it, you're not breaking it. You're honoring it because you can set it on your mantle, look at it, and say, "Yeah, that's what we should be going for," and I'm comfortable being just short of that. Right? My ideal morality may be that the Cowboys win the Super Bowl once in more than a quarter century. You know what? It might be different for everybody, right? Is moral perfection possible? That's an easy answer. No. But is moral perfection possible? The answer is no. Right? And there's the similarity because we gave the same answer. To the ideal, the answer is no, and so it's okay if you don't achieve it. To if it's a moral rule and we understand that we can't achieve it, then the danger between the two is the fact that you stop trying to perfect it. Okay? Yeah, I drink too much, but at least I don't do something else, right? So my ideal can change and is different by topic, right? By topic. I can have a moral ideal, and so if I don't lie a whole lot, I can put myself above everyone else, right? Because my one moral ideal is this, and I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at doing it. But in the rest of my moral experience, I have deficiencies, but I can still put myself on the shelf, right, above everyone else because I do this one ideal well. Okay? So Lewis digs into this concept a little deeper, and he says that there are two ways where the human machine can go wrong. One is where human individuals can drift away from each other or collide with one another and do damage. The other is when things go wrong inside the individual, when the different parts of him or her drift apart or interfere with each other, that internal conflict. Okay? So Lewis offers this analogy. He says, consider we are ships in formation at sea. The voyage will be a success only if, one, the ships don't veer off course and collide with each other. And two, if each ship is seaworthy and her engines are good. As a matter of fact, you can't have one in this scenario without the other, okay? If you're colliding with each other, then the ships won't remain seaworthy for long. And if the ships aren't seaworthy or the rudder won't turn correctly, what are you eventually going to do? Collide with the others. So they go hand in hand, right? You cannot have one without the other, okay? But there's a third thing that must be considered. Can you think of what it might be with this fleet of ships staying in formation? Okay. Hope. Bingo, right? That you're going the right direction. There's no point in the voyage, okay, if New York is our destination and we end up in the Shuaibah port in Kuwait. There's no point in that voyage, okay? Maybe we didn't collide with each other, nobody veered off, and all the ships made it, but they had no direction and didn't end in the destination they needed to. And he says, morality then seems to be concerned with three things. First, with fair play and harmony between individuals. Second, with what might be called tidying up or harmonizing the things inside each individual. And thirdly, with the general purpose of human life as a whole. What man is made for. Okay? What course the whole fleet is on. And sadly, most of modern society honors the first, abuses the second, and discards the third completely. As evidenced by the wonderfully modern maxim, I'm living my own truth. I just threw up a little bit. Okay? The second is abused with the following phrase. We've all heard this. What does it matter what I'm doing as long as no one gets hurt? All manner of sin is excused this way. But most of humanity honors the first, fair play and harmony with other individuals. The result of bad morality in this sphere is so obvious that it is unavoidable as a tenet. War, poverty, graft, lies, theft, right? The list goes on. You break that first one, then you have the benefit of everyone else in the fleet looking at you and saying, what are you doing? Okay? So as long as you stick to the first tenet, there's agreement and surface level harmony, and that harmony is of the same mind. But unless we go on to the second, being internally harmonious, we're only deceiving ourselves. The world can follow us into the second, okay? And they can follow us into the second without belief in God. The second being the internal, right? Internal harmony. They can follow us into the second without God, but only for so long before they have to answer a few questions. Yeah, and first and foremost being, where did this moral law come from? So that's a little bit more difficult to stay in and is often dropped, right? And we can do plenty of self-harm that will keep others safe, but even then, only for a short time. Internal or individual sin will end up hurting those around you. And I don't think there's any question about that. There's no internal sin that won't end up affecting those closest to you. 9 out of 10 times, 99 times out of 100, folks, porn is a private sin, which happens to be destroying families. So the notion that as long as no one else is getting hurt can't stand. It can only be rephrased as long as no one else is getting hurt right now. Our belief, our faith, involves a series of statements about facts, which must be either true or false. If they are true, one set of conclusions will follow about the right sailing of the human fleet. Now let's get back to our fellow who says that as long as he's not doing anything wrong, as long as no one's getting hurt, that he's not doing anything wrong, he actually believes that that is a license to continue doing what he's doing because he believes he owns the ship. Now, does it make a difference in the care we take of the ship if we believe it to be wholly ours? And this is a really, really good point in a way to view this in sort of a different light. If we believe ourselves to be our own, then does it matter? Now, I'd really like a boat someday. I'd love a boat which would go nowhere near the ocean. But if I can get a boat one of these days, I'll put it up in a northern lake, right, where you can fish for real fish like northern pike and muskie, right? Things that, you know, if you dangle a limb in the water, it might take a bite out of you. And I like being at the top of the food chain if I decide to take a dip. So if I ever get that boat and put it, you know, up there in one of those northern lakes, and I'm coming in after a rather unproductive day of fishing, and I'm coming in a little bit hot, right? A little fast. I start to slow down towards the dock. I scrape the dock, right? I hit the dock in my anger, right? No damage to the dock, but I've got a gash now in my boat. Describe my emotions. Cry. Yeah, that may be. Before I cry, though, I'm probably going to what? Panic? Does anger come in there?
And you're going to get more angry.
It's going to snowball. It's going to snowball fast. The more I look at it, right?
You're gonna wonder what dummy decided to put a dock there.
I'm going to blame somebody else. Thank you. I did not think about that. And I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. Because clearly a dock didn't belong there.
We had a kid at our school that was injured, and he said we should have moved the tents.
We could trade those kind of stories, you know, all day, right? Right? Question is, does worry come into it? Would worry be an emotion that would fit on that day? You gotta think about that. You have to kind of think, would worry, why would I worry? It's my boat, right?
Are you married?
Your wife might
Is it paid off? Okay. Okay. You're going right where I want to go, right? Worry's not going to be the first thing, though. I think we understand that. It's not going to be the first thing. It's going to be, you know, anger to tears to more anger, snowballed into even more anger, and then blaming someone else, right? Those 7 stages of acceptance, I guess. I don't know. But does it change if the boat belongs to Steve Justice? Okay, that was a lot of, yeah. Describe those emotions. Fear, yeah. What else?
Panic.
Regret, panic, yeah. Wondering if Steve has paid it off, right?
I think worry comes in way faster.
Worry comes in way faster because it's not mine. Okay, and if we take a look at that scenario and we really kind of sort of layer it, that worry, part of that worry is the fact that Steve trusted me with the boat, right? We're all embarked All of us. Even non-believers. They just don't know it. They don't realize it. And that's one of the steps of, bringing those non-believers into the hallway, right, that we've been talking about for 12 weeks. One of those steps is saying, you're not your own. But the good news is, neither am I. None of us are. Right? There's community in that. There's no community in everybody owning their own boat, because you can go wherever you want to go in any direction you want. But there's a community in not owning that boat. As a senior in high school, I borrowed a car for prom. It was a nice car. I didn't return it in the same shape it was in when I found it, right? I won't describe the incident, but there was a dent about the size of a dinner plate in the driver's side door when I returned it, okay? And to say I was concerned, I wasn't calling my parents because I'm in trouble with this phone call, right? I wasn't calling the guy who owned the car because he owned the car, right? I'm going to see whatever I can do. Well, you can't buff that out, right? It's like this big, right? But if it were my car, I'd have been like, come on, go look at my truck now, okay? The tailgate of my truck has a big old dent in it from an oak tree that I didn't see backing up with a load of wood because I didn't have the camera. That's how lazy I've gotten, right, with backing up, okay? When it happened, I was sick. But I got over it pretty quick, too, because it's mine. I'm still paying on it. Right? So, the moral rules have a purpose. The moral rules have a purpose. It's not an ideal. It's a rule. We are the created, and the Creator paid a very heavy price for us. Let's point His ships together toward home and bring as many as we can. That's community. That's purpose. Right? We are not our own. And the Creator has written those moral laws on our souls. Believers, non-believers, everybody. Right? We're not our own. Now, any comments? Stories, anecdotes, complaints? Anything? Okay. Next week, with the few minutes that we have remaining, next week we're going to go on from morality to the question of whether or not Christianity is hard. So let's go ahead and survey now. Who believes Christianity is hard? Some hands went up really fast, right? And I'm with you guys. Okay, Christianity is hard. Okay? But what did He say about His burden and His yoke? Easy and light. Can both of those things be true at the same time? They better be, right? It's obviously that the answer is yes, right? Those two things can be true at the same time. And I think I've told this story before, but I had a buddy of mine in college. His name was David. And I was mad at him forever because we were having a conversation, and he goes, living for Jesus is easy. And I was like, how dare you trivialize the difficulty of this journey? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's easy. It's easy. I was mad at him for months, okay? For months. Old David. I think when I told that story initially, you said something. He was talking about simplicity, right? Simple, but maybe not easy, but simple, because the rules are simple, right? And I get it. I got it even more when I was standing next to his Harley years later, and we were strapping his urn on the back seat of it. We were going to take him on his last ride through the Ozarks. And I kind of got it, you know. Where he is now, where my dad is now, man, he can look back and say, that's all I had to do. That's all I had to do to be here. To witness the glory that they're witnessing now. I get it. Does it make it easier here? Sometimes no. Sometimes yes. That's situational, right? And that's where we're going next week. So if you're reading along, it's chapter 8 of book 4. Actually, I said we're going to leave book 4 alone, but we're going to go ahead and venture into it. Chapter 8 and hopefully 9. So next week's our last class. So it's been pretty cool up to this point. I've had fun. So look forward to one more with you guys. Let's say prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this. And I want to thank you for every blessing that you've given us. Father, the boats we're in may not belong to us, but we know which direction we should be going. You've made that clear from the start, that home's where we need to go. And we have a responsibility to bring as many with us as we can. I just pray that you bless our efforts in that. Give us the strength and the courage to do what we should do and say what we should say, when we should do them and when we should say them. But give us the gentleness of nature to do so in a loving way. To remove self and replace self with you in the blood of your Son. Bless us this week, Father, and be with us always, and come soon. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.